Hello, everybody. This is Gamerwatch. Welcome back with us. Welcome back. We are on episode 6 now. Uh, I'm Rom. This is Ash. Say hello.
Hey, what's up, guys?
Today we have, after much deliberation, we've decided to sort of, put the game in Gamerwatch a bit and hop into a little bit of coverage on Shadowlands. Now, admittedly, neither of us have received access to the beta yet. However, we've kind of stayed on top of the news, and I tend to watch some YouTube videos and things like that on the coverage. Ash, you've been keeping up with kind of what's been going on?
Yes, I have actually.
Okay. Good. Bueno. So, yeah, let's
We're
just
teasing me.
sort of dive right in a little bit. Well, first of all, obviously the big thing, and probably the most actually controversial, right? You'd agree, is the covenant system.
Yes, very controversial. So, I mean, let's break it apart. What's wrong with it so far in some people's eyes? So right now there is four factions, four groups, if you want to
Mm-hmm.
call it. They each come with their own class ability and generic ability, right? And so for two of the systems, it's a movement ability, and for the other two systems, it's more of a well, one system or one group, one faction is a shield, so that absorbs shield
Mm-hmm.
pretty much. That you have to channel, and then the last one is like a stewardess comes in and gives you some items and a health potion, right? So I think the health part of that is like equivalent to like a health stone, but yeah, it just gives you some goods, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's all like the generic abilities, and then you have the class specific abilities, right? Alongside that, it is also like a tree, like a talent tree for each faction,
Mm-hmm.
and there's three different talent trees you can choose from, right? So what's the problem here, right? It's a pretty interesting system, right? Lots of choices, lots of variety. The problem is the Blizzard wants to make you stick to one faction, one covenant,
Yeah.
right? They don't want you switching around, and obviously they've implemented a way for you to do that, right?
Yeah.
But they prefer you not to do that. And the problem is, well, if something is good for, what if one of the abilities is good for maybe PvP? Well, will it be good? I mean, will I be, will it feel bad if I don't have it for PvE compared to other people who do have these other covenant
Mm-hmm.
abilities? And so the idea around like min maxing and having the correct abilities, is that just RPG? Is that like the core RPG feel, or is that just feels bad to play it, right?
Exactly. And so and there's a big issue with that because so the way Blizzard sort of, Ian specifically seems to defend this in the sense that he's saying that, oh, beyond just your choice up front when you create your character of your race and your class that you choose, there's not much of that permanence in terms of the game, in terms of how you sort of uh, play it. There's always a lot of options and variation in terms of like, and I believe he said the term loadouts, where you can change. You at this point now you can change your race, you can change your spec, you can change whatever you want your talents to fit the currently existing problem in front of you as a character. And they kind of want to bring back that feeling of permanent choice and an RPG element to it, which, granted, it's an interesting idea theoretically. The problem, though, comes to in terms of, for me specifically, is now that there's this going to be druids. For me specifically, I main a druid with different abilities than I do when I go about raiding, and there might be different other without necessarily in terms of skill there being a difference. They just simply have the better tool to address the problem at hand without necessarily being a better player per se, right? I think this is kind of a big issue that's controversial and why people want to be able to switch back and forth between the covenants, between the four of them: Venthyr, Night Fae, Kyrian, and Necrolords, because they all offer these like very specific abilities on a class by class basis, also on just in terms of like the four covenants as well, that they could potentially like help you solve a problem. Not that it's impossible to do it with being one or just being one or the other, but it does make it the task at hand easier, right?
Yeah, I mean it can do a lot to help you,
Yeah.
especially the movement abilities, right?
Yeah.
It's been shown the event 3 ability. It allows you currently to teleport, right? It's like a
Yeah.
blink pretty much, which is insanely helpful, right?
Yeah.
So yes, I can see it. I think I personally am fine with it with the differences because yeah, I would agree with Ian. Like the core, like this, WoW an has become a game where like that RPG feeling of classic has kind of been lost, and they're trying to bring it back like with the professions and
Mm-hmm.
everything, right? But it's turned into more of this like instance gameplay with like Mythic Plus or PvP or raiding,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the core RPG feel, I do kind of agree where Ian comes from. I think ultimately, if it comes down to of the tuning, if they get the tuning right to the point where it's like within like I don't know 5%, right?
Right.
I would be fine with that, right?
So,
Um,
and but my problem. So here's where my problem. Like, nothing Blizzard has ever done previous to this has like, first of all, this is like as ambitious a system as I've ever seen introduced into a game, into this game, I should say. Because they are fundamentally changing how people will be playing their class. In term like, I shouldn't say their class, their characters. And so like what, like I said, many druids. Ideally they split the player base into, evenly. They make it appealing enough to different sections of the player base that 25% of the player base roughly evenly gets split up among each of these four covenants. But if they start to tune, so like if the history is any indication, they start to tune as they always have, they are going to, if something starts off overpowered, it will get chopped down so hard that it will become relatively underpowered, compared to the way it was before. Like they are so drastic with the, how they change or how they balance and fine tune these knobs, so to speak, where these abilities will get, sort of humbled and become a shell of their former selves. I don't necessarily see, like, I'm going to be frustrated if I choose something that starts off as, fantastic or great for my, specifically I play Resto Druid, and that they specifically, it starts off as a fantastic ability, and then if they mess with it later on, I'm going to be so annoyed, considering how, this choice is going to be permanent if they change it to the point where it is no longer as good as it used to be. And, I guess my choice, I'm screwed and stuck with my choice, or like they said you can change it, right? But it'll be difficult and punishing.
so how they mentioned that is it's easy to switch to another
Mm-hmm.
covenant, like really easy, right? Like I think it's just you do some clicks, right, and then you're in that
Oh,
covenant.
okay.
But switching back is what they don't want,
Oh,
right? Like so,
okay.
yeah. So if let's say you're event 3 and you want to switch to Kyrian, right?
Okay.
Pretty easy. Like I think right now it's just, oh, are you sure you want to abandon this, or are you sure you want to join this thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? Just like some clicks, right? Maybe one quest, but
I
which is
mean,
nothing.
do you lose
So
progress though, relative to, like, or do you have to reset your progress within that covenant?
you do need so each covenant has its own like renown bar,
Yeah,
right? Which is the
exactly. Yeah.
currency. Yeah, it's a new build up,
Right.
right? So I don't know how much that is going to be,
Mm-hmm.
but joining a new covenant is not hard. They don't want you to like switch. Let's say, oh, event 3 is good for PvP,
Mm-hmm.
right? But then you switch over to Kyrian for raiding, right? They don't want you to like continuously do that, which I get. I think having everything is like a talent choice. Just oh, I have these talents, I have this covenant, I have this talent, this conduits,
Right.
right? I mean, conduits is switchable, so I think having a little bit of permanence is fine. It's going to, yeah, you're right. It's going to come down to tuning. If they tune this correctly first go, or I mean, close enough, right?
Yeah.
And give ample time for the tuning to happen before the game launches. I mean, obviously there might be some tuning issues. It's really hard to do this like 100% always get it
Yeah.
right. But you know, I believe, I honestly believe Blizzard has a good chance this time for multiple reasons. A, they gave up on BFA at the end, right? They just kind of like, oh,
In the middle, even.
we're
Yeah.
done. Let's they go to Shadowlands,
Yeah.
right? And a lot of people, I mean, there's a lot of things wrong with BFA
Mm-hmm.
currently, right? Corruption, PvP, some classes are insanely broken,
Sure.
per se. And they mentioned pretty much they said that hey, we mostly focus on Shadowlands, and I respect that to an extent, right? You know, there's no point if I either want them to fix Shadowlands or BFA, it would be Shadowlands, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm fine with that. Also, they've done some unconventional or new stuff that they have not done before, right? The discussion with Preach, right? It was a discussion, not necessarily like a Q&A, right?
Yeah.
They're doing more Q&As. They've shown to be listening to feedback way more than they were like previous expansions, right?
Sure. I mean, okay, they might be willing to. Okay, they are showing an increased.
They're making changes also. So I honestly believe like if I put a chance on this time versus last time, I believe they're putting way more effort in this time. I would take the chance
Yeah.
because I think Covenants. I know some people care about the tuning a lot,
Yeah.
right? I think Covenants is a like a unique, cool idea, right?
I definitely.
It's going to
I
come down
definitely
to
think so. Yeah.
tuning, right? Right. It's going to come down to
Yeah.
tuning, and I'm willing to bet this time, just based on what we've seen for Shadowlands so far,
Yeah.
that they can do it, right? I'm willing to give it one more go.
Sure. Okay. So yeah, I have sounded probably a little bit negative, just in the last few minutes. But don't get me wrong, Covenants sound incredible. Is potentially like the ability to, to join. So I mean, it's kind of a way more interesting take on the Aldor versus Scryer, thing, right? Like it's taking that idea and going way beyond that.
Yeah. Right.
But the only issue is I am I'm curious to see if they put their money where their mouth is, and if they truly want RPG a level of permanence within this system. If these abilities, if we carry them with us beyond this expansion, you know what? I'm kind of more likely to buy into it a bit, because if they are actually talking about wanting to bring the quote unquote RPG element back, then okay, like let's do that. Like that is ultimately good for the game if they start to set the trend of maybe each expansion doing something like this. I am totally cool with that, as long as it actually stays permanent, and goes beyond. Now, if it's just
Wait, how much permanence are you looking for? Like the whole thing
like I'm
permanent?
talking about, like I want to keep the abilities that I get. I don't want this to be a borrowed power system. Like if they are justification for this, for making it sort of a permanent choice, quote unquote, is that they want to bring back the RPG element to the game, right? So do that. Put your money where your mouth is, and if they manage to if we manage to take these abilities with us beyond this expansion, beyond Shadowlands, into whatever comes down the road, I am totally cool with that. I am willing to give them a lot more lenience in terms of how they fine tune these abilities, because I know that these abilities will be with us for a long time beyond just this borrowed power system. I don't know. At least that's just kind of how I see it.
Maybe, but I don't think. I mean, it's pretty much a barred power system at this point.
And,
So.
and that's where my contention sort of comes, where I think that, like, if it's a borrowed power system, just let, like, and your justification for it is honestly kind of BS, in terms of, oh, we want to have players make meaningful, quote unquote, meaningful choices. This isn't really a meaningful choice. Like, just make it, if it's going to be a borrowed power
I mean, it's
system,
here
just
for 2.5 years.
I'm sorry.
Like if it's here for 2.5 years, isn't that still kind of
Well,
meaningful?
okay, but why can't it be? So, I mean, in that case, they are going way far and out beyond it. Why can't they just have the same abilities tied across, and just different, quote unquote, skins of the abilities, right? Like that are tied to the Covenant, and then just make the choice tied to the sort of the aesthetic of each Covenant, like in terms of the transmog or mounts or whatever you might get. Maybe some like
The
open world
possibilities?
abilities, maybe I'm cool with, like that are more specific to that, but like taking it into raids and PvP, that's a bit much, I think. Like,
So I mean, yeah, some of the abilities they would need some tuning in those specific
yeah.
areas. Yeah, so if they made like a town road and said like, oh, you worked with your covenants and then you're in their secrets or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, right? And then you just have it reskinned.
Sure.
I think that would be the best option technically,
Yeah,
right?
that's like kind of.
Because you still have your generic abilities, you still have the conduits and everything,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I would be fine with that. I think, I mean, while it's only here for 2.5 years, I think contrary to some people's expectations,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's still a good way to develop that meaningful choice and meaningful, you know, identity, right?
Sure.
Like you're not just a Death Knight, right, or a Druid or a
Hmm.
Druid, right? You're a Kyrian Death Knight or Kyrian Druid. So I honestly do agree with Ian and see where he's coming from, right?
Yeah. Well.
Again, it's gonna come to the tuning,
Yeah.
but a lot of people. So actually, I was watching Preach the other
Hmm.
day. I think Blizzard wants us to think a certain way when it comes to how they approach the game, right? And it's just not like that anymore, right? I mean, so like Preach was the other day. He was talking about like, oh, I came online and then all of a sudden because like everything got unlocked pretty much,
Yeah.
right? Everyone was asking, what's the best build? What's the most DPS, right? Because DPS meters was also added
Yeah.
to beta. So they're like, what's the most optimum build? And Preach was like, well, it's kind of sad to hear all this because he kind of sees where Blizzard is coming from. They want that more RPG feel and the more maybe slightly less casual feel to
Yeah.
it. But everyone's just like, what's the best DPS? So that's the problem with it is Blizzard wants it to be our mindsets to be one way, and unfortunately we're another way, right? And I would agree. I wanted it to be how Blizzard wants it per se, in my
Hmm.
opinion, having this more casual RPG feel per
Hmm.
se. Unfortunately, like with like raid bots with Simcraft, all people want, even though beyond like the top 100 guilds and beyond like the very high keys, it doesn't matter, right? People want the best routes, the best gear, the best
They want to be
talents,
the
right?
most efficient. Absolutely.
And I mean, and what I just don't understand is, I mean, there's still a skill gap there, and there's still ways to get better at what you're doing,
Sure.
and people observe, and I've seen it. People observe the higher end players and copy them.
Hmm.
Doesn't work out for them because they don't have the skill level necessarily at the time to take to utilize that build the most optimal build,
Absolutely.
right? Because like usually like the most like for example for Druid, right?
Hmm.
Like most optimal build usually has like some snapshotting with some proxy
Yeah. Yeah.
stuff,
The
right?
Blood Talons build. Yeah.
Exactly. While like there's other builds of like just passives, right? And that's like for all classes. There are more passive
Hmm.
builds where you can remove your buttons, right?
Sure.
Have everything passive per
Hmm.
se, and some people don't realize that like, hey, this passive build, like let's say the passive build or like this easier build is like 10% DPS loss,
Uh
right?
huh.
On the build. But if they do the other build, the skill level's not there, so they actually lose like 20% DPS, right?
Right. So they would have been better off doing the less optimal but easier build.
Right.
Right.
And also, if they were optimized and they lose like 5-10%, right? Because like I think Blizzard said this once, and also other players, these less optimal builds, they're not that far off most of the time, right? The DPS difference is not that bad,
Usually, yeah.
but they play just because the perceived notion of the higher end, because the higher end are like straining out all like they're sucking the juices out, right, of like the most optimal
Yeah.
build, and so it looks like, oh, it's doing way more than it is, but like if you pass on down to the casuals, the difference between the most optimal build and someone who's less optimal is barely anything, right? Because the difference gets smaller and smaller as you get the skill level, it gets lower and lower.
So it's kind of to put it in.
So it's like it's a mental difference here. Like it's a mental idea of like what people expect
So
from
I
Shadowlands.
once heard this one podcast I used to listen to talk about this one guy specifically talked about how, oh, a lot of listeners think that they can do what we do, and they just can't. They can't cut it. And here I am talking on my second podcast. Maybe he was right to a certain point, but I will say that the same sort of mindset might apply to these other raiders, where maybe they believe like, oh, if I had time, or if I had the right guild or the right people
Right.
surrounding me, I could do what these cutting edge or even beyond. I can do what these world first guild these world first raiders do. And obviously that's not the case, right? Like people will have this like this sort of feel like that they feel like they can do whatever those people do, but they can't. Like the limits, now defunct method. We really aren't sort of on their level by
Yeah, the
any
Echo
means. I'm
now.
sorry.
The Echo.
The Echo? Oh, right. That's what
Yeah, I
they're
know.
rebranded, right?
Yeah, the new name's Echo
Right,
now.
right,
Not.
exactly.
Yeah.
So like no, of course, most of us can't do what they do, but if we can at least, start from a similar point, maybe one day we can reach that similar point. Is maybe I'm kind of sort of trying to justify their mindsets. Now, sure, they maybe when you truly, gun to their head, they won't liken themselves to that, but maybe subconsciously they feel like they have to do everything they can, similar to how they see, like you said, they're watching these people, so those people they're watching, these streamers or whoever, like these world first raiders, have sort of, there's a trickle down influence where uh people will want to do the same thing and take on the same challenges, even though they're like in a freaking heroic guild. You know what I mean? Like people might try and take those steps to be as efficient as possible, to then therefore try and churn out the best numbers possible. Like, okay, yes, they will probably be suboptimal, and they may in fact may have lost efficiency relative to doing the suboptimal build from the get go. But they do deserve the right to sort of try, right? Like eventually, like they might not be the world class raider now, but maybe eventually they'll get to a point where they're parsing well, or and then they push themselves into mythic or upwards. So I can understand their mindset. I'm not necessarily agreeing with it, because even I'm ultimately probably gonna go Night Fae one way or another. Like I might, that which may or may not be the most optimal resto druid choice.
Why do you like Night Fae?
Druid stuff, just basically just druid
Use
stuff.
That's it.
Yeah, just I
Okay.
like the aesthetic. Like
Oh, you wanna
I'm
you wanna be a Night Fae? Oh,
yeah, just
that's
going
so
with
nice.
aesthetic, and like I like the idea of the
How
mount
cute.
they get. I think I saw a mount and the different forms they get. Like I just like it just makes sense for Resto Druid. So I am rolling with the RPG sort of justification, and let's see where that leads me. If I mean, I'll take one last look at all the abilities just to be sure before I lock in, because I don't know if maybe, like I said this at the beginning of BFA, I don't know if I would like to get into keys more than maybe rating, but maybe rating is the way to go ultimately for me. I'm still not sure what I'm going to do, if I'm going to be doing anything at all with classes potentially down the road. So I don't know how seriously how much time I'll be able to commit. However, I will say that Night Fae seems the most likely for me, simply because of the aesthetic. I'm just making that choice. It might be a choice that reduces my HPS by 5%, but you know what? So be it. And honestly, I'm gonna parse orange anyway. Let's be honest. So you know how I do, Ash. You know how
Okay,
I do.
okay, okay. Let's tone down the
Yeah, yeah,
ego a
yeah.
little bit, okay, kid?
Anyways, so I mean the covenant system, again, I'm just gonna reiterate. I think that it is super ambitious. It looks like something like, this is honestly,
Does it look
it,
fun?
it looks great. Like there's gonna be those weekly events. There's gonna be like these transmog tied to these different covenant systems or different covenant factions. There's gonna be different world quests, different benefits. I think there's like, isn't there like a teleport system depending on,
Yeah, something like that.
yeah, there's different followers that you can get, at least specifically with Kyrian that I know of. So we'll see. I don't know. Like, what do you kind of, how you kind of seeing it play out?
I like it. I
Yeah.
think the only problem with for me, it's not the core
Yeah.
abilities, it's the utility. So I'm worried about. So I play Death
Mm-hmm.
Knight. Cat's out of the
Yeah.
bag. Two of the abilities are movement abilities,
Right.
right? And so I don't care about the DPS that much, right? I honestly don't. I think it would be close
Mm-hmm.
enough where it doesn't matter to me. It's the utility that worries me a little bit. Because I'm hoping to go Necrolord, but maybe Ventry also.
Okay.
But Ventry has a movement ability, Necrolord has a shield. So
Right.
there's applications for both, obviously. But the utility worries me. That's the only part of the covenant that worries me, not the DPS. I think people focus too much on the DPS.
Mm-hmm.
And as I mentioned previously, there's way more to your DPS than just one ability. And yeah, having the perceived notion that it's better might help you out a little
Sure.
bit, but like if you really look at the big picture, it really doesn't matter that much. So, but like having like maybe like one of the conduit abilities gave you free transmog. So, get it?
Wait, which one was that? Who was that?
I don't know. I think it's Brent 3.
Oh, I might have to take a look at them, because I,
Yeah, exactly. So,
I'm the transmog kind of. That's just my
how
thing.
okay, your transmog's are terrible.
That's my
What do you
thing.
mean?
Whatever.
Yeah, do you like go and get some
champion of all the
transmogs?
transmog events. But yeah, okay. I'll
But
have
yeah,
to. I might. Yeah. So
yeah. So the utility, I think, unless we see like what all the different utilities are for all the different
yeah.
class covenants, because I know some of them are not out
Yeah.
yet. So we have to wait and see on that. But safe to say, probably meant for your Necro Lords is what I'm looking at. Because the class, the problem is some of the class abilities also have utility baked into it, right? So the Death Knight Necro Lord's ability, the Abomination
Yeah.
Limb, I think it's like every second it pulls a target that's like I want to say 5 yards, might be bigger than that, or like towards you. It's like a death grip.
Okay.
It lasts for like 12
That's
seconds.
pretty nice for melee. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really
Yeah.
nice, right? I'm thinking of like a blood DK also, right?
Yeah. Sure. Absolutely.
So, but like while the Kyrian is like a single target defense, so the Kyrian Death Knight ability, you put like a buff or debuff on the
Yeah.
enemy. You do damage to them, but you also put a debuff where it reduces the amount of damage they do to you. So that could be nice for a blood DK, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
So the problem happens when they bake utility into the DPS abilities, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they're just straight up DPS, that's tunable. I think yeah, we call them out on tuning, but that's tunable at least, right? But when you have straight up utility, like look at Rogue Shroud, right? The only thing that broke them in BFA,
Yeah.
I mean they were lower DPS than some of the other DPS, but the only thing that stopped them from coming like Mythic Plus, a lot was the seasonal affix, the obelisks, the
Right.
awakening,
Yeah.
providing you the ability to um, basically skip packs, right? Jump around where you want
Yeah.
to. So utility, I think, is where people should be focusing on, not the DPS, because you can always tune DPS, and it looks like they're making more of an effort to. So
Hopefully.
that's my only concern.
Yeah. No. No.
About this.
Utility. I mean, even in a lot of other games, it plays out that utility is more. I mean, when optimized and like which eventually comes with game time, like the average player base knowledge as it goes up as the game gets older and older. You look at a character like May, for instance, or Orisa, their utility of like, for instance, Orisa when in the shield meta as she became more and more prominent in the shield meta, or May with the wall, like they don't necessarily churn out the most DPS necessarily in terms of their abilities, that like relative to say like a Hanzo or a Junkrat or something, but their utility push them far and ahead of everyone else. Same idea, kind of. You bring it over into Warcraft. I can definitely see that playing out that way, especially for like things such as Mythic Plus or PvP. Obviously PvP, right?
Right.
Yeah. So that's more your world, but yeah. So that Covenant has a lot of promise. Like I would definitely in terms of talking about that, a lot of promise. Very ambitious. Hopefully,
I think people are reacting to it though.
probably overreacting. I mean, we still have all of the beta cycle essentially to get through. Eventually, you and I will probably get beta. Obviously, we're huge content
Hopefully.
creators, so it's just a matter of time.
I mean, I got muted once, so maybe that's being held against
Oh,
me.
perhaps, maybe. You never know. You never know. Well, yeah. So we can continue that conversation for another time as it sort of fleshes itself out a little more and we get more
Right.
details. But
And we'll come
there were
back to
some
it.
interesting changes also with it, mentioned with the chess system, like the Mythic Plus rating and
Yes.
PvP.
I like
Yeah,
it.
you will kind of want to go into that a little bit.
Sure. So previous in BFA,
Mm-hmm.
if you do a dungeon,
Yeah.
I think if you do a 15, which is for 8.3,
Yeah.
season 4, you have a chance of getting a 475 piece, right? You just have to do one dungeon,
Mm-hmm.
right? PvP had its own chest also, and depending on your
Mm-hmm.
rating, you got your own eye level there also. Right?
Correct.
So 2 separate chests. Raiding did not have a chest, right? It's just straight up you raid, you get the gear.
Mm-hmm.
In Shadowlands, they're changing that. So so how it works is 3 different rows. So the first row is raiding. If you do 3 bosses,
Okay.
it will give you an option. You'll qualify for your weekly chest, right?
All right.
How they did it, right, is they combined all the chests. They gave raiding a chest, right? They combined PvP into this chest and Mythic Plus into this chest. So if you do any of those content, raiding, Mythic Plus, or PvP, you get your item for the week. So it's one chest only. Okay, no 2 chests because they want to limit. They're trying to limit gear in Shadowlands,
Yeah.
and I think this is good because Now you can really focus on what you want to do. If you want to do raiding, you kill the amount of bosses you
Mm-hmm.
need. You get your weekly chest, right? If you want to do Mythic Plus only, boom.
Yeah.
If you want to do PvP, right, you get that. So they also added another function because part of the problem was the RNG of it, right?
Right.
I I get a bad piece week after week. How do I target that?
Yeah.
Right? First piece is you getting so as I said, there's going to be 3 rows on like the UI, right? For Mythic Plus, rating, and PvP, 3 choices for 3 of the activities,
Mm-hmm.
right? So for the first part, rating, if you complete 3 bosses, it would give you an option to choose from, right? Complete 6, another option. 9,
Now,
another option, right?
does
9
that
bosses.
scale based on the difficulty of the boss? I would assume so, right?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
so, right? And then Mythic Plus, right? The second row is Mythic Plus. 1 dungeon, I think it's 10 dungeons right now, or 5.
Mm-hmm.
And the third option is 15, right?
Okay.
PvP, 50, 100, 50 conquest, 100 conquest, 250 conquest.
Okay.
So if you do all those activities, you'll have 9 options to choose from, and you could choose the one piece that benefits to you the most. Now, I know some of you are saying, well, what if I am that unlucky, right?
Yeah.
I get all bad choices. There is an option for you to get a currency also, which is like the Titan Residuum,
Right.
how it is now. So you get a currency, you can choose that currency. I think it'll probably take longer than 1 week to get whatever piece you want.
Probably.
I'm assuming 2 to 3 weeks or something
Yeah.
like
If it's any longer, it's too much. Yeah.
that. Right. So I think this is a good system. It gives you the flexibility to really focus on the end game content you
Yeah.
want. Right. You don't have to do Mythic Plus anymore, unless you want extra options. You don't have to do PvP anymore. That was a huge complaint from people this expansion. Well, not a huge complaint. I think more of a small minority that is complaining, right? And you always get
Yeah.
those,
Of
but
course.
they're talking about, oh, I don't want to do PvP for the extra chest. I'm a PvEer. I only like Mythic Plus. Why do I have to PvP? And I kind of get that. But now the system here is for you,
Yeah.
right?
So if you let's say you
But
complete 2 of those 3 activities, do you get less currency then? I assume.
I I don't know for sure. I think it's just one and done. So if you only complete one activity,
Okay.
so like let's say raiding, right? There's 3 bosses, 6 bosses, 9 bosses,
Yeah.
right? You complete only 3 bosses, your chest is pretty much how it is now in BFA.
Okay.
Same chest pretty much. One random for whatever the eye level is, right? Let's say it's 275,
Mhm.
right? One 275 item level piece,
Sure.
right? Random, just like it is now in BFA,
Yeah.
right? Now you're doing more content, 6 bosses, which is not that hard, right?
Mhm.
You're getting 2 options now. So so yeah, and then there's an option for the currency also, and I don't know if it's probably going to be equivalent, right? The problem is, people always, I feel like people are always looking for something to complain about.
Sure.
People are saying now, hey, if I want all 9 options, I have to do 15 dungeons, 250 conquest, and 9 bosses a week, right?
So
And they're saying it's going to be mandatory just so I can get to my best in slot, or I can get, ahead
well,
of
it
the game.
certainly could be mandatory at the top end, right? But that I would think that you and I were talking
I mean,
about this.
yeah,
That probably stops, around
after
top
like
100.
100. After the 100th
Yeah.
guild, I think it stops.
Probably.
So,
We don't know for sure though. Like here's the thing. Like I think Blizzard is. You said Blizzard is creating a product. This is something I believe Preach said or someone said, which I kind of agree with. They're trying to create this product for a player base that's in their maybe more
yeah,
idealized in their eyes.
right.
Like, but I don't know. There's a lot of like. I mean, we've talked about toxicity in gaming and like how our last episode got into a little bit with like guilds and like problems we've had in the past. Like people will abuse it and put like probably unfair make unfair requests that their base may or may not
I doubt it.
deal with.
Because, I mean, so a lot of guilds nowadays, even though
Yeah,
they demand you have 15 for the week.
sure.
And I kind of get that because you're losing out. That's a big piece of gear, right?
Yeah,
475. They could make this mandatory, but like, how are they gonna check that, right?
yeah, and on top of that, like,
You just say, oh well, all my choices were bad. I just got the currency, right? Because if you only do one dungeon, the one dungeon for the
yeah,
week, you still have a choice between that option
And the currency.
and the currency.
Yeah.
So you just be like, okay, I didn't get anything good, and I just got the currency. I think this will be overblown. You might get assholes who are trying to enforce. Like you get the guys who think they're really good and they're trying to enforce it on other
The Raiders.
low
Yeah.
level players,
Yeah.
right? Like no one at the high end is going to enforce this per se, unless you're like top 10, right? Top 50.
Probably.
So this it's gonna be like all like the low
The
mythic guilds who like
tryhards.
going to
Like
be
the
like,
tryhards.
yeah, the
Yeah.
tryhards, exactly right. They're going to be like, well, we need you complete all 9 options. You need to do this and this. So because we're a really serious guild and we're trying to progress here, right?
Sure.
But if you step back and and look at like the whole picture, it's like there's more fundamental issues happening with you guys on why you're not
Yeah,
progressing.
like so like for me, for instance, like I look at it from my point of view and I see, okay, like especially from like, let's say, where I was end of Legion. I haven't really, and beginning of BFA, even at my most quote unquote hardcore, I was still like I wasn't like a super casual mythic raider, but I wasn't a cutting edge raider either. I was kind of maybe like in terms of like on a scale of 1 to 10, probably like a 7 in terms of how maybe a 6. I don't know. You might disagree, but like, yeah, certainly wasn't cutting edge, but but I wasn't like,
You were
I
0.
wasn't like 1 out of 11 or 12 mythic either. I mean, what did I finished 9 of 11 mythic and end of Legion? I don't know. Point is that I would say you say I was a 0. Point is that I look at it from my point of view. I see like 2 of those targets sort of being accomplished really easy. The dungeons might be a bit excessive, don't you think? 15 dungeons a week, or what was it you said? 10 or 15?
Yeah, right now it's 15.
Yeah, that's a lot.
For 3 options. So I mean, so the rating,
Yeah.
9 bosses. Like unless it's like first week of mythic or like high
Right.
end. I don't know if you do at least 1 boss mythic, it counts, right?
Yeah.
I don't know how that's
Yeah,
gonna work.
the sliding scale of difficulty could, like, if I do 1 boss mythic and then 9 or 8 LFR bosses, what happens there?
Yeah, so I can't speak to
Yeah.
that yet, but depending on how they do it, I think doing 3 to 6 bosses pretty reasonable.
Yeah.
At the very least, doing 1 mythic dungeon pretty reasonable. Doing, let's say, 50 conquests,
Yeah.
right? Pretty reasonable. I mean, I don't think this is. I think this is a lot of more flexibility than they ever given
Sure.
before. They've condensed it all into one option, one piece of loot, one chest, and they give people options, and they give people currency still. I think people are still looking for a reason to complain, in my opinion.
I mean, probably, but there
And
might
yeah,
be
I'm
some.
not going to deny this.
Sorry, go ahead.
Wait,
No,
what?
I was just.
No, I was just going to say. Okay, you go
All right,
ahead.
sorry. I was gonna say there might be some validity to what they're saying, like to what people are complaining about, in the sense that these expectations might be put on them. If not by them, then just by like the community at large. Just because like we don't know how the mythic rating community will sort of handle this necessarily. Like they might put pressure on people to run the mythic pluses and the rating, because the PvP they don't necessarily. Like when you run let's say you run 15 mythic pluses in a week, that's also helping the guild in itself, right? Like just because like you're more likely to get gear after running that many mythic pluses. They might like ask people to do certain ways. Like I don't know how successful they'll be, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, this is our rating guilds, right?
Yeah.
So the rating aspect's already completed.
Mhm.
So I honestly don't. I think people are looking for scenarios that won't actually really happen.
Probably not. Yeah.
I mean, there's always going to be assholes. There's always going to be people who do this stuff.
Yeah.
But at that point, I would say just leave the guild.
There is something
because-
to be said for the increasing expectations in terms of like what people are expected to do at the absolute highest tier of rating, though. Like, and this is something, again, to go back to
Right,
what
but-
Preach has said just recently. Like, they are so. I mean, just imagine like these world first guilds, like to get their most optimal, like ahead of, like to try and be ahead of the game. They theoretically they might have to have 4 of each class, right? 1 with each of the ability covenants, right? 1 tied to each of the covenants, potentially, and then on top of that, run 15 mythic pluses, kill 9 bosses rating, and then also do all that PvP for each of those characters.
I mean, they're used to doing that already because, yeah. So like in BFA,
Yeah.
right? they did all that for their PvP
Yeah.
chest. They already going to do the dungeons for the gear, right? Because it drops like high end gear is still
Yeah.
good. And raiding, I mean, they're going to raid also. I don't think this is anything out of the ordinary. Like the Covenant aside, right? Because that's a whole another tuning
Yeah.
issue, just due to the systems they introduced. The idea of that you're going to be running like the high end. Let's look at the high end first, all right? The the thing that they're going to be running extra content, I think is false. Just due to the fact that they're already going to be doing dungeons, right, for the gear.
Sure.
15 is not out of the question. Like they probably already did 15 a week last time for to gear up their
Per
mains,
character,
gear up their
though.
ults. Right, but like, if they're trying to funnel gear also,
Yeah.
I mean they probably already did that. Like yeah, they maybe do only 10, and adding 5 more might be excessive depending on how they tune that,
Yeah.
right? So I mean this is early beta, so they might tune that down, but they already did like like a number of that for each end game content.
They
So I don't think it's out of like I don't think it's a huge jump to put these barriers in
it
for them to get all the options
it
possible,
might
right? Because 250 conquest is way less than the 500 is now, assuming it's like similar.
yeah. That's the thing. Like maybe I just think the dungeon requirement might be a little bit much. Maybe I don't know. Like those seem like unbalanced because I would argue that you could potentially kill 9 bosses faster than 15 mythic pluses potentially. Like I guess maybe that scales. That's actually different from mythic level rating, but there's just those time commitments seem a little out of whack between those three.
So yeah, that might just be tuning.
Yeah.
So, but I like the system. I think it's a good options. I think gives people the choice.
Yeah.
Like also adds in the choice of choosing what endgame content you actually want to do.
Yeah.
So, I don't think I think they did good this time. Yeah, maybe they have to the Mythic Plus people, or I mean the top end people have to run a little bit more.
Yeah.
But I mean they're used to jumping through the hoops, right? Whether it's Azeroth or Corruption, or just leveling up multiple characters, right?
Yeah.
They're always used to jumping through the hoops. I don't think you should. If there's options for you to help the high end without affecting everyone else, sure, right?
Sure.
I don't agree that I don't think Blizzard's designing the game around those high end, the top 100, the top 50 guilds.
No, yeah, they should design bottom up, not top down, for sure. I mean, I agree with
exactly. So I think they'll be fine. I don't think this is outlandish by any means. Covenants, maybe.
that. Yeah.
This system with the Mythic Plus rating PvP chest,
Yeah.
I think it's perfectly fine.
Only it wouldn't kill them to throw in a second piece of gear if I think people did all that stuff, to be honest. Like,
Well, I mean, you're also getting I think you get a little bit of currency, and then you might get extra if you choose that the extra part of
Yeah.
it. The extra currency because every of your options aren't.
okay.
I don't know for sure. Beta, it's still in beta. It's still early development.
Yeah, I just think the work to reward ratio is just a little out of whack. They might need to either cut down on the work if they're committed to one piece of gear, or turn up.
Well, I mean, one piece of gear is one dungeon right now, so.
No, but like, okay, yeah, that's fair. But like one piece of gear in terms of like the choices, like if you complete all that, I think maybe there should be increasing choice, or like maybe you have the option to choose 2 pieces of gear out of the 9, or out of the however many options they present to you if you completed all that. But anyways,
I think they wanted. I think they trying to make it where like you do the content you want.
Mhm.
At the very least, you complete like if you complete one dungeon, right? It's the same as it now, right?
Right.
I think they want you to complete the content you want and don't want to be forced into doing it right. If you're top end, your content is being the best of the best.
Sure.
Right? So that's where you want to do all this because you also get gear from the individual activities. Also,
You do.
right?
Yeah.
So, but if you like less, like if you're just a raiding and you just do all the raids and you like one Mythic Plus dungeon.
Yeah.
I think that's where they're trying to get like, okay, we gave you 6 options, which is way higher than the one you got in BFA and in Legion.
True. But you
So-
also have to do a lot less work to get the one option. So that's what I'm saying.
Well, I mean, yeah, but same way, you only have to do one dungeon.
So that's what I'm saying. Like if they're scaling upwards in terms of the gear options you're getting, at least I think maybe like I think the scaling has gone a little out of whack in terms of what they're asking people versus the reward. It's still you're ultimately ending up with one piece of gear. What if you get all bad
Yeah.
choices, you know? Then that doesn't feel good to do
Well, you
all
get currency
that.
then. You get
Right, but
currency.
again, that doesn't like imagine like doing all that work every week and then getting currency for it.
Well, then,
Like that's not
I mean,
ideal.
I guess don't do it then.
Okay, yeah, fair, but I think that that's potentially a very
People,
disappointing system if you get all these options and none of them are good and you just get a currency for which you might be able to get a piece 2 weeks down the road or another week down the road. That's a lot of work to just, and I'm calling it work. That's a lot of time commitment for, you
well,
know,
like raiding like 9 bosses, that's what a normal raid is. So
usually, yeah.
you're doing your normal raiding a week, right?
Right.
PvP, maybe, but I mean, people already did that anyway if they cared about like the PvP part of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And BFA, it felt more mandatory because you got a second piece of gear from it, right?
Yes.
Now it's just another option. So technically, you don't even need that. You're not losing out on gear. You're just losing out on the options, per se. But like, I'm assuming it's going to be from the PvP options, not necessarily the Mythic Plus options, right? So that's going to be maybe a lot of haste verse, right, or mastery verse.
Okay. Yeah.
So that could be gear you don't even want to target to begin with.
You know what?
So
I just thought of a solution. I would say present the choices on the bar. Like let's say there's some hypothetical bar you fill up potentially.
right,
Just present the choices you would get ahead of time, and that way the players would know: do I commit all this time because I want to work towards a piece? Just flip this.
I mean, you already know that from Mythic rating and Mythic Plus. And
What do you? No. Right. You know already know that like for instance.
Yeah, PvP, sure, but I think you can look that up.
No. I know.
Off
Like
it.
that's what I'm saying. Is that just present the choices for the chests you would potentially get? Like let's say
Yeah, sure.
you just show the choices up front. Then I'm okay with it. I've boom solved it. Easy.
Okay.
Washing my hands of this. Easy. Done.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Whatever.
All right. So. All right. Going on to this.
I think it's fine. Okay. So yeah.
Yeah, it's okay. You're allowed to be wrong. I mean, talking about PvP actually. Not many changes. From what we've been seeing, right? Like, it looks like
Conquest is back.
Conquest is back. Yeah. Like, how do you feel about that? Like having a currency. You're the PvP guy.
I like it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it'd be easier. It's easier way to target things.
Sure.
But yeah, because I kind of like the problem with PvP now in terms of rewards is like you go through like if you fill up your bar, you get like a 445 and a 460, which is kind of like meh if you're doing higher content than that or higher rating. Um, getting upgrades and getting pieces from PvP felt kind of really too random, honestly. Because at least if you do like a Mythic Plus, you know you have a chance of getting like you know what gear you might get, and you know the chances of getting it. But while PvP, that you're getting all those pieces random after each game, and so I think having something to work towards you, like a set goal versus just random RNG,
Yeah.
I think is better. To be
I
honest.
agree. Like of all the like different MMOs I've been in, like it's the system that people always seem to feel best about is the one where they have to work towards pieces that they see ahead of time rather than these chests that are sort of randomized and gear that's randomized from the bar. Although you said you can look it up, but like you know what I mean. Like it's just nice to
Yeah,
have a goal to work towards, and like if you hit this or
exactly.
you do this much work, you put in this much work, you get this. Um,
Yeah, I hate RNG pretty much. Like un unknown goal
yeah,
ends, unknown goalposts is just feels bad to me.
yeah,
Knowing like echoes right now, right? Like people talk bad about echoes. The upside of it is at least it's a goalpost. Like if I do this amount of dungeons, if I do this amount of PvP, I get this amount of
yeah.
echoes. And I can buy this amount of corruption,
Okay, yeah,
right? That feels like while like having rotations and having corruption itself, right? That feels bad per se, but like being able to work towards something and having currency
yeah.
feels more beneficial in certain areas, especially like PvP when it's so RNG this season or this expansion.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. Then like there's not like anything groundbreaking. Like let's say with covenants. I mean, covenant abilities will function in PvP
Yeah,
as far as I know, and I believe they will be like individually or separately balanced, right? From how they function in a
yeah,
PvE setting.
they're gonna do
Yeah,
that. pretty much.
so there's going to be a separate world sort of PvP, and maybe, um, we'll see.
They're all looking good, pretty good so far though.
They're what?
They're all looking
They all
pretty
have their
good.
like sort of like
Yeah.
different
So
strength.
yeah, the Necrolord's shield
Yeah.
is like there's a conduit or a talent
Okay.
row or talent tree point.
Yeah.
If you choose it, while the shield is up, you cannot get CC'd.
Oh.
So it's like maybe for rogue mages, you have that up. Hey, they can do the opener on you because you have the shield up,
Right.
right?
That.
While on the other
Yeah.
side, like the movement abilities might be easier, right? Like are you chasing a Windwalker or a Mistweaver? Hey, having the Venthyr or the Night Fae movement ability,
Yeah.
pretty good. And the Kieran Stewardess seems the most lackluster, but even having a health potion, right?
Yeah.
I think you can also get some more other benefits from it, like other side effects. Health potions, not that having a health stone, permanent health stone, could be the game changer.
It could. So then, therefore, it's kind of working out in the sense that different covenants, different abilities that sort of, branch off from the covenant down into the what is it, conduit
Right.
system will
Talent tree, whatever.
yeah.
I forget what it's called.
So they'll all shine in different scenarios, which is kind of the point, right?
I
That
like
works.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the point of the
Yeah.
system. That it's good in situation A, but not in situation B, and vice versa for other stuff.
Yeah.
So,
As long as they all have like strength and are, sort of balanced in the sense that
yeah.
they're useful. That's a good start,
Uh-huh.
I guess. In PvP, that matters more than specifically, I think. As long as these abilities shine, like PvP isn't necessarily about each individual damage you can, point of damage you can eke out, where it's more obviously apparent with logs and parsing in PvE. PvP is more situational, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, I think, where the Covenant system will probably shine, if anything.
Exactly.
I can see it, and we'll see with Mythic Plus and obviously then rating. But yeah,
Like I don't think rating the utility is going to matter that much, except for the
that's the
high-end,
thing. Yeah,
because they're going to be designed without that. Because you can't design with having like the shield or like the movement abilities,
yeah,
right? So they can't design around that. So it's not going to matter that much.
yeah,
Then the DPS is going to matter more, and the DPS part of it will matter for rating. Mythic Plus will be both, right?
yeah,
And then for the PvP, I think the utility is going to matter more. So like there's different areas where different things will shine in, and so but depending on what you do, you might keep that in
yeah,
mind.
exactly. So I mean, kind of the last major sort of piece of the puzzle heading into Shadowland to cover in terms of covering it, uh, Torghast and the Maw. So
Right.
so as far as the Maw goes, like information is still coming out a bit, still streaming out where, it's this zone, sort of like just like for instance Ice Crown. It's just a zone you can go into, right? Um, and the more sort of damage you do, the more like the further in you go, or the more mobs you kill, whether you solo or with a group. As I believe it, um, you will start to draw attention, quote unquote, from the jailer. And the further you go in, you might come across some quests. People have speculated, like at least in lore terms. I don't know if you're aware of the lore, like in terms of like the lore, what's gonna happen potentially, but like these souls are stuck in the maw. So like the maw has quote unquote been broken since Legion. Therefore, that means like characters who have been killed, such as like Sourfang, might be there, or like all the people who got burned in the
You mean Trash
yeah,
Fang?
exactly, or like or all the people who died in the burning of the world tree. They might be stuck there, quote unquote. We might come across them and have to like help them out or whatever. There might be cosmetics, obviously, will surely be there. But I mean, in terms of Torghast, so like as a PVE, I should say before I move on to Torghast, as a PVE zone, it sort of seems like potentially interesting situation, don't you think?
Yeah, I like it. I think it's going to be depending on how they go about
Yeah,
it. Because I don't think we know too much about it
yeah,
yet.
like
So it sounds interesting.
it
That's for sure.
does. From what I understand, actually, though, you can't but like you can go there unlimited amount of time, so it's not like it doesn't function as like for instance the what the things where you go into a corrupted Orgrimmar now. What are those called? Eluding me for a second.
Oh, the
Yeah,
visions.
visions. Thank you. It doesn't seem to function that way where you need to grind out a currency to go there. It's an open zone, so that's kind of nice. However, in terms of instanced content, we have Torghast, which you know about more about, right?
Yeah, so Torghast is like it's an unlimited
Yeah,
dungeon where there's like floors with difficulties floors with bosses and mobs on
yeah.
there. And as you ascend, the mobs and bosses get more difficult, right?
Hmm.
And so the catch is you also get uh, powers throughout the dungeon or throughout the tower, right? And those powers will basically increase your power level as you go through it. So, like, well, for example, one of them is for, like demon hunters, right? It increases your size and melee attack and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
So it looks really cool. There's another one that increases your critical strike, and that can stack a lot. So pretty much, this is like the zone where you like get lots of powers and you just go out of control, pretty much.
Okay.
So it's pretty interesting. A lot of people like it. This is also going to be where you get your legendary from, like your legendary essences for crafting your
Yeah.
legendaries. So this has a very important value in terms of that part of it.
Probably.
But in terms of gameplay, people really like the feeler, right? You're getting all these different powers and it's unlimited. The the mobs, the ambiance of the
Yeah.
dungeon or the tower feels really good to people. It's unlimited scaling, so you can go as far as you want.
And that's the thing, though. I have to, we've heard a lot about, like this, like sort of element of replayability, which
Right.
theoretically, it seems like places like Torghast and the Maw are going to be relevant for a while, or at least that's what they, Blizzard wants us to believe, right? But
Right.
I am a little hesitant that these places will hold up over the course of, like you mentioned earlier, average length of an expansion about 2 to 2.5 years. That is a large task. That's pretty difficult to do, and I don't know. There just might be burnout. We saw with what was it, Expedition Islands and stuff like that. Like those were technically supposed to be replayable and have like different elements where they're sort of, but we know from from the start, from launch, they weren't received very kindly.
Yeah, I guess so, but I think we'll see how it goes going forward.
Yeah.
Uh, they did they did make some changes in terms of they didn't you cannot change talents or classes anymore. All right, I mean specs anymore,
Okay.
right? So which I think kind of helps because I know visions right now you had an opportunity to change from like let's say frost to unholy, right? Unholy you might do some big single target
Yeah.
damage or like burst damage, while or maybe blood for like just tanking mobs. So that might help. The other problem with the Torghast is people have been mentioning, right, is that uh, the scaling of the powers you get is far exceeding the scaling of the mobs and as themselves, right?
Yeah. I've seen that too. Yeah.
So yeah, exactly. So you're just going, after like I don't know the levels, but let's say after floor 30, like you can all this like you get super crit, so you have like 100%
Yeah.
crit, plus your crit does more damage, right? So you're just like killing everything,
Yeah.
right? So that's something to look out for with tuning. I think it'll probably be tuned, but that can get boring after a while. So we'll see.
Yeah. That sounds like just a tuning issue that hopefully
Yeah.
they can
Do you
address.
increase the mobs, or do you just decrease the powers?
I mean, I would think they have to decrease the powers because increasing the mobs, yeah. Because yeah, the mobs should. I mean, they should scale within reason, like pretty linearly. If the powers go up exponentially and that outscales the linear progression, that's a problem, huge problem. That the solution to that would make them both sort of go up in terms of similar. I mean, you do want the players to feel more and more powerful, so that because if you just scale it so that the powers scale exactly similar to the mob power, then that's a problem. I think maybe how they scale on higher levels is through like more
Right.
difficult mechanics. But we'll have to see how that works. I've seen some streams, but not necessarily anything. I haven't necessarily stuck with one to see like exactly how it functions. Like I've read more about it than I've seen it. So
Yeah, I will see from once we get beta, hopefully.
yeah, again, we're huge content creators. Of course, we're getting it in the next wave of
Hopefully.
invites, obviously. So
Oh, I have a strike against me,
Yeah,
actually, so
yeah.
I might
I
not
don't know.
be.
Maybe
It'd be
maybe
up
they'll
to you.
forgive you. Just write them an apology letter, just like you similar to that G quitting letter you wrote our guild leader one time.
Yeah, that was pretty brilliant. Okay, I think they'll accept
Yeah,
that after
yeah.
that.
Yeah, just wrapping up. Like as you said, we've now moved technically from alpha to beta. For Shadowlands. So like, how do you see
Right.
it compared to like how BFA played out in terms of a similar point in time?
Way
Way
better.
better.
From a Blizzard standpoint, the communication is better. The discuss like because they had a discussion with Preach, which did not ever happen before,
Yeah.
really. And they're making actually they're listening and making active changes for the most
Yeah.
part. So from a development standpoint, it's looking way better than BFA. I mean, then again, BFA set the bar pretty low. So,
It did.
but this is still even compared to Legion, right? This still looks pretty good. The only excluding how Covenants and what we talked about the problems with
Yeah.
them, this is looking like a pretty good expansion. So I, I would, I mean, there's always a chance for Blizzard to like mess this up, right?
Mhm.
But personally, I would say this is turning out to looking like a pretty good expansion so far.
So there's a lot of credit being given to Ian Hazacostas for having that conversation, right, with Preach.
Right.
And they're like, oh, he's never done this before. They've never done this before, where they've kind of had like this open discussion where,
Which I think helps.
so in terms of communication, I'll say yes, they're killing it, right? I am still a little hesitant with the covenant system and how they're like they are showing a sort of a resolute kind of like that same level of stubbornness they showed with Azerite armor, where people are warning them about the potential downfalls. Now maybe, to be fair, maybe the warnings will be wrong, and maybe the community won't abuse the itself essentially and self regulate to the point where they
I
have
don't
these
think they can
unreasonable
do that.
expectations. Yeah, probably not.
Outside of like the high end, I don't think they're gonna do
But
that. And if people do that, it would be foolish.
I'm saying I do see a lot of the same sort of stubbornness that they showed. Maybe not, they weren't as upfront in terms of showing it, but like it was still there. Like they are committed to not having people switch this around like talents. That is just I will say this though, and they did mention in that Preach interview, they are that for the first time. I think this was mentioned across any interviews with across the entire community, that if they have to, they will go to that as a last resort. I just hope that
Right.
if the time comes for that last resort, they don't do it 2 patches too late like they did with Azerite Power, or Azerite Gear, I should say. Um, there was a lot of goodwill lost early on in BFA with Blizzard, and I hope that they act faster. Is all I'm saying.
I'm willing to give them one more chance, to be honest.
Yeah, fair.
One last
One
try.
last chance. Otherwise, what? You're gonna go play what? Final Fantasy? You want to play Guild Wars 2 with me? I love
No.
Guild Wars 2.
Yeah, no thanks, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Maybe there's another MMO coming out. There's the
Oh yeah.
I know Amazon's coming out with the MMO, so maybe that.
It looks okay. Kind of.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
But I think besides the Covenant's problem, the expansion's looking pretty good. Personally, the Covenants so far is not looking like a huge problem for me personally,
Yeah.
so I'm fine with it. The problem, see, that's okay. Before we wrap up, the quick problem I think is when you have usually the high end players are the ones actively communicating with Blizzard,
Mhm.
right? Looks like doing the interviews and all
Sure.
that stuff, right? Because if you're a streamer or you're influencer, whatever you want to call
Most
it, right?
likely a high end player. Yeah.
You're more high end, right? Usually, for the most part. Preach is high end. All these other people are high
Yeah.
end, and what they want is like this lack of RNG, right? And what they so pretty much what they view as fun is not necessarily what the whole player base might view as fun. Sometimes it aligns, sometimes it doesn't, right? Because they come from like a more higher end gameplay, and what people don't keep in mind sometimes is majority of the people is pretty casual.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think when it looks like they're just disagreeing with Preach sometimes, I mean, I kind of want to see like the full picture, right, of like everyone's feedback versus, oh, the higher end people, like the small minority who are complaining.
I mean, potentially that could just be solved by sending out more beta invites to to more casual players.
Well, see, I think they said they send out enough beta invites until it's full.
Yeah.
And as people stop playing, right, they check it out once they stop playing, then they invite more people.
Okay, fair. I'm just
So I don't know. Yeah, that's what Ian said. So that's all I have to
And
go off
also,
by.
to
But
preach his credit, he completely called the Azerite gear disaster, like, well ahead of time. Like, I specifically remember a video he posted where he said this will be a problem, where players have to replace low eye levels with their best in slot traits. Then they have to grind out a new Azerite power, the exact same Azerite power on a higher eye
right,
level piece. Like, he called this disaster, and like how it just wasn't that interesting to begin with. Like, there was very little choice. Then Blizzard packaged the Azerite gear as sort of a way to customize your character. Like, Blizzard often leans on these similar themes or tropes where they justify these systems that are just destined to fail. So I'm not saying
I
all
mean
their
they
systems are bad,
conceded.
but
So they conceded for conduits. Now it's a permanent
yeah,
thing, but you can change it only once a week.
yeah,
But you have three people for the three talent
sure,
trees, and each talent tree has multiple rows. So I think they conceded there. They should, because they equivalent that
mm-hmm.
system to the Azrite, and they're like, the Azrite did not work out. They learned from it. Right?
Yeah, and I hope they
I think
continue to learn. Is all I'm saying. Um,
I mean Covenants is more permanent abilities, and I think this is less about like the system being bad universally per se, right?
yeah,
And more like where the priorities of your gameplay is at,
yeah,
right? So if you're more casual, this doesn't like the min maxing doesn't matter. But if you're more serious, then it does matter, perhaps. But like the Azure was just like a bad system overall because you couldn't play multiple specs. Farming other pieces of gear felt bad. You're losing gold,
yeah.
right? So that was bad all around, right? But here was more like I feel like is a more thematic issue of like where enjoyment is
This,
at. And that's like where it's I think for me.
yeah, I
Different.
will say that these systems I see, like I said earlier, I can see the Covenant system shining, especially in PvP and probably in Mythic Plus as well, where utility shines and different scenarios will call for different utility. In a raiding scene, though, numbers are king in terms of production, player output, and yeah, that is kind of where it will be interesting to see like what kind of wiggle room, or how I shouldn't say that, how drastically they or how willing they are to change and fine tune without necessarily destroying the player's choice, right? Like, that was my concern that I mentioned early on. Like, I want to be able to choose, if I choose a covenant that potentially is best for my spec, my class, my ideal scenarios where I raid all the time or whatever, I don't want that to
Right.
change. Like, if I'm committing to that, I'm committing to that, but we'll see.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think. I mean, we'll see how much tuning they do
Yeah.
beforehand. So I guess it's hard to speak about it anymore until all it comes
Exactly.
out.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm speaking on behalf of, I guess, I'm talking about it in terms of like how I can see people viewing it. I'm personally just going with the aesthetic, so I don't care. I'm trusting Blizzard works that all out. So yeah, we'll see.
Right.
So yeah, this I think we've kind of talked our heads off about this upcoming Shadowlands spec. We can only speak so much without actually feeling it out ourselves, right? We don't have access unless you've been hiding that from me. I don't think any.
I guess you'll find
Yeah,
out.
I don't think any
You'll
keys
find out.
came in the Gamerwatch email we've set up. So and nor did they come to our personal accounts. So yeah, this is again. I'm Ram. Please, that is Ash. Please do leave a like and comment if you'd like on potential future episode ideas. We've mentioned before, we have a huge list of ideas we want to get through. We're slowly getting through them. To this episode was specifically, we're putting the game back in Gamerwatch a little bit and just kind of going through Shadowlands. We'll eventually have some updates, I'm sure, down the road, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
So
I think some new patches will be coming out in the next couple
exactly.
of weeks. So that'll be good.
So yeah, again, I'm Rom. That's Ash.
And I'm
yeah.
Ash.
And thank you very much for sticking with us. Leave a like and catch us next time.
All right. Thanks for stopping by, guys.
See ya.